Let me tell you something I wish every pregnant woman knew before she heard the words bed rest. Your body will complain. Your back will ache, your legs will feel heavy, and you will get tired. But your mind? Your mind will play games you never knew existed. It will turn a quiet room into a prison. It will take away your sense of self before any physical symptom ever does. I have seen it happen more times than I can count, and each time it breaks my heart a little more. Annie was 31 years old when she first sat in my examination room. She had that quiet confidence some first-time mothers carry, like she had read all the right books and prepared for everything. Her pregnancy had been smooth so far. No nausea, no bleeding, no red flags. She laughed easily when I asked about cravings. She talked about her husband Rohan painting the nursery walls a soft yellow. Everything about her said this was going to be an ordinary, beautiful journey. But the body does not care about plans. During her 20-week scan, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. Her cervix was too short. Not borderline short. Dangerously short. The kind of short where a sneeze or a wrong step could send her into premature labor. I kept my voice steady when I explained what this meant. 4 months of strict bed rest. Not the kind where you can still move around the house. The kind where getting up to use the bathroom feels like a risk. She stopped smiling then. Her hand moved to her belly, like she was trying to protect something that had suddenly become incredibly fragile. And in that moment, I knew the hardest part of her pregnancy had not even begun yet. The room felt different after I gave Annie the news. The warm afternoon light still came through the window. The ultrasound machine still hummed softly, but something invisible had shifted. Annie stared at the image frozen on the screen, her baby's profile peaceful and unaware. Then she looked at me with eyes that asked a question she could not say out loud. Is my baby going to die? I pulled my chair closer to her and explained the medical reality as gently as I could. A shortened cervix at 20 weeks means your body is already preparing to deliver. The baby weighs less than 300 grams. The lungs are not developed. The skin is paper thin. If she went into labor now, nothing could save that child. But if she stayed completely horizontal for the next 16 weeks, if she gave her body every possible chance to hold on, there was hope. Real hope. But it would cost her everything. She asked me what complete bed rest actually meant. No cooking. No cleaning. No driving. No walking to the mailbox. No sitting upright for meals. No showering standing up. She would need someone to bring her food, help her to the bathroom, and turn her every few hours to prevent bed sores. Her world would shrink to the size of a mattress. For months of staring at the same ceiling, listening to the same sounds, feeling her muscles weaken day by day, Annie nodded slowly, but her hands were shaking. She asked if she could have 5 minutes alone. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Through the glass, I watched her press both palms against her belly and bow her head. She was not crying. She was praying. And I knew in that moment she had no idea how dark the road ahead would become. The first 3 days, Annie told me later, felt almost like a strange vacation. Her husband Rohan took leave from work. Her mother-in-law came to stay with them. Friends sent flowers and messages wishing her a speedy recovery. She propped herself up with pillows, watched afternoon television, and told herself she could do this. For months sounded impossible, but she had survived difficult things before. She could survive this too. But by day 4, the novelty had worn off completely. The television gave her a headache. The same 4 walls started closing in. Every time she needed to use the bathroom, she had to call someone to help her walk those few steps. She stopped asking for water because she felt guilty making someone bring her every small thing. And the fear began creeping in like a shadow she could not outrun. What if she moved the wrong way in her sleep? What if she sat up too fast? What if she sneezed too hard and lost everything? Rohan tried his best, but he did not understand why she was crying over spilled juice or why she stopped talking during phone calls. He told her to be positive. He reminded her this was for the baby. He meant well, but every kind word felt like a weight because he could not see what was happening inside her head. Annie started counting hours instead of days. She started listening to her body with such intense paranoia that every twitch, every cramp, every tiny sensation sent panic shooting through her chest. By the end of the first week, she had stopped eating properly. Not because she was not hungry, because eating meant sitting up slightly. Sitting up meant risk. Risk meant guilt. And guilt meant she would lie awake at night wondering if she had already hurt her baby without knowing it. Her mind had turned a medical precaution into a prison sentence, and no one around her could see the bars. The third week is when Rohan called me. His voice was tight, the way husbands sound when they are scared but trying not to show it. He said Annie had stopped responding to him properly. She was not fighting anymore. She was just lying there, staring at the ceiling for hours, sometimes crying without making a sound. When he asked what was wrong, she said nothing. When he tried to hold her hand, she pulled away. He asked me to visit, and I went that same evening. I have walked into many bedrooms where bed rest patients were staying. Some felt peaceful, filled with books and prayer beads and hope. But Annie's room felt different. The curtains were drawn even though it was only 4 in the afternoon. The lunch tray beside her bed was untouched. And Annie herself looked smaller than I remembered. Like something had been draining her from the inside. Her eyes were open but empty. She acknowledged me with a small nod, nothing more. I sat on the edge of her bed and asked how she was really doing. Not the polite version. The real version. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her face crumpled like paper, and she told me she hated her body. She said her legs felt like they did not belong to her anymore. Her back ached constantly from lying down. Her muscles were softening, disappearing. She had always been an active person, always moving, always doing. Now she could not even roll over without help. She said she felt like a patient in her own life, waiting for something terrible to happen. But what scared me more was what she said next. She told me she had started resenting the baby. Not the idea of the baby. Not the future child. The actual baby growing inside her. Every time she felt a small movement, instead of joy, she felt anger. This baby had trapped her. This baby had taken her body, her freedom, her sanity. And then she looked at me with tears streaming down her face and whispered, "What kind of mother hates her own child before it is even born?" That was the moment I knew her mind was breaking faster than her cervix ever could. It was 2 in the morning when my phone rang. I remember the sound cutting through my sleep like a blade. Rohan's voice on the other end was shaking so badly, I could barely understand him at first. Then I heard Annie screaming in the background. Not a pain scream. Something worse. Something broken. Rohan said she had been crying for hours, and then she told him she wanted to terminate the pregnancy. She said she could not do 4 more months. She said she would rather lose the baby now than lose her mind completely. I drove to their house without changing out of my pajamas. The streets were empty, and all I could think about was how quickly hope can turn into despair inside a pregnant woman's heart. When I walked into their bedroom, I found Annie curled on her side, her face buried in a pillow, her body shaking with sobs. Rohan sat on the floor beside the bed, helpless, his own eyes red and swollen. The room smelled of fear and exhaustion, and something else I could not name. I sat down on the bed and placed my hand on her shoulder. She flinched at first, then slowly turned to look at me. Her eyes were raw, swollen, almost shut from crying. She looked 10 years older than the woman who had smiled in my clinic just 3 weeks ago. And when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. She said she had been lying in that bed counting every single hour for 23 days. She had memorized every crack in the ceiling. She had stopped feeling like a person. She was just a container now, a vessel, and she did not want to be a vessel anymore. She asked me if I had ever seen a woman lose her mind from bed rest. I told her the truth. Yes, I had seen women develop severe anxiety, depression, even hallucinations from extreme isolation. But I had also seen women come back from that dark place. I had seen them hold their babies and cry tears of gratitude that they had held on one more day, one more hour, one more breath. She shook her head and said she was not that strong. She was not a miracle story. She was just tired. So deeply, impossibly tired of fighting a war that no one else could see. I did not leave that night. I pulled a chair next to her bed and told Rohan to make tea for himself in the kitchen. Annie and I needed to talk, woman to woman, without anyone else filling the silence. She resisted at first, turning her face away from me. But I waited. Sometimes the most important thing a doctor can do is sit still and let the pain speak when it is ready. After a long while, Annie began to talk. Not about the bed rest. Not about her cervix or the medical risks. She talked about the guilt. She confessed that every morning she woke up hoping something had gone wrong in the night, so this would all be over. She confessed that she had stopped talking to the baby because she was afraid she would say something cruel. She confessed that she had imagined running away from her own home, leaving everything behind, just to feel the wind on her face one more time. And then she looked at me with an honesty that broke my heart and said, "I do not feel love anymore. I feel nothing. And that nothing is worse than any pain I have ever known." I reached over and held her hand. Her fingers were cold and thin. I told her something I rarely share with patients. I told her about a woman I treated 15 years ago. Someone who had been on complete bed rest for 5 months. That woman had confessed the exact same thing to me. She had said she hated her unborn daughter. She had wished for a miscarriage. She had screamed into her pillow at night begging God to take the pregnancy away. And then that woman delivered a healthy baby girl. And the first time she held her daughter, something shifted. Not immediately. Not like magic. But slowly, day by day, the love returned. Annie listened without interrupting. Her tears had stopped. She was just breathing now, slow and deep. I told her that pregnancy does not always come with instant bonding. Sometimes the circumstances are so brutal that the heart closes down to protect itself. That does not make her a monster. It makes her human. And the fact that she was crying over feeling no love proved that love was still somewhere inside her, buried under the fear and exhaustion. She squeezed my fingers and asked in a small voice if I really believed that. I told her I had seen it too many times to doubt it anymore. Then I asked her to try something small. Just one thing before sunrise. The small thing I asked Annie to try was simple. I told her to place both hands on her belly and just feel. Not to talk to the baby. Not to force love. Not to pray or hope or do anything except notice. Notice the warmth of her own skin. Notice the rise and fall of her breathing. Notice if anything moved. She looked uncertain, but she did it anyway. Her hands rested there, trembling slightly, while the room stayed quiet except for the distant sound of Rohan washing cups in the kitchen. 2 days later, at 26 weeks, Annie felt something she had not allowed herself to notice before. A flutter. Not the vague waves she had been dismissing as gas or muscle twitches. A real, distinct movement. Like a tiny elbow or knee pressing against her from the inside. She froze. Her breath caught. And for the first time in weeks, she did not feel anger. She felt surprise. Pure, unfiltered surprise that something alive was in there, fighting just as hard as she was. She called Rohan into the room and made him sit still with his hand on her belly. They waited together in silence. And then it happened again. A small kick. Rohan's eyes filled with tears. Annie did not cry. She was too stunned. But something had shifted in that moment. A crack had appeared in the wall she had built around her heart. Not a breakthrough. Not a miracle. Just a crack. But sometimes a crack is enough to let a little light through. That very night, her body betrayed her again. A fever started creeping up, slow and dangerous. By midnight, her temperature crossed 101 degrees. Her abdomen felt tight, harder than it should be. And then she felt something else. Contractions. Not the fake ones. The real ones. Her cervix, the same cervix that had put her on bed rest, was now trying to open. Rohan called the ambulance with shaking hands. Annie lay in the back of the emergency vehicle staring at the ceiling of a different room now. And all she could think was that she had just started to feel something again. She was not ready to lose it. The hospital corridor that night was the longest I have ever walked. Annie had been admitted to the labor and delivery unit, and I met her there just as the nurses were hooking her up to monitors. The contraction readings were coming every 6 minutes. Her temperature was still rising. and the baby's heart rate, which should have been steady and strong, was dipping with each contraction. I remember standing at the foot of her bed, watching those numbers change, and feeling something I rarely allow myself to feel in front of patients. Fear. Real, deep fear that this baby might not make it. We started intravenous antibiotics immediately to fight the infection. Magnesium sulfate to protect the baby's brain. Steroids to speed up lung development. Annie was shaking uncontrollably, not from the fever but from terror. She reached for my hand and asked me to be honest. Was she losing the baby tonight? I told her the truth. We were fighting, and she needed to fight with us. Every contraction she felt, every painful wave, meant her body was trying to push this baby out before its time. Our job was to stop that from happening, but I could not promise her anything. Outside her room, in that cold hospital corridor, I saw Rohan lose his composure for the first time. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands, his shoulders heaving with silent sobs. A nurse brought him water. Another nurse brought him a chair. But he stayed on the floor, praying in a language I did not understand. Other patients' families walked past him, some staring, some looking away. That is the thing about hospital corridors. They hold more prayers than anyone will ever count. Inside the room, Annie's contractions slowed after 2 hours of medication. The baby's heart rate stabilized. But the infection was still there, hiding in her body waiting. The decision came down to this. Keep her pregnant as long as possible, but monitor every single hour for signs of distress. One wrong turn, one sudden change, and we would have to deliver a baby too small, too fragile, too early. Annie looked at me with exhausted eyes and asked if she could hold my hand again while she slept. I pulled the chair closer and stayed. The next 2 days blurred into something that felt less like time and more like endurance. Annie remained in the hospital, monitored around the clock. Every few hours, a nurse would come in to check her vitals, adjust her and ask the same questions. Any pain? Any leaking? Any contractions? And every time, Annie would hold her breath while they placed the fetal monitor on her belly, waiting for that rapid whooshing sound of her baby's heartbeat. That sound became her lifeline. As long as she heard it, she knew they were both still in the fight. Something unexpected happened during those 48 hours. Annie started talking to the other women in the ward. There was a woman named Priya in the bed next to hers, admitted for the same reason. Short cervix, bed rest, endless waiting. They exchanged small stories at first, then deeper ones. Priya confessed she had stopped brushing her hair because lifting her arms felt like too much effort. Annie confessed she had not looked at herself in a mirror for 2 weeks. They laughed at how ridiculous that sounded. 2 grown women afraid of their own reflections. But the laughter was real, and it was the first genuine sound of life Annie had made in weeks. One of the older nurses, a woman named Sunita who had worked in that ward for 22 years, pulled Annie aside during a quiet moment. Sunita told her something I will never forget. She said bed rest is not about resting. It is about surrendering. Every single day, you wake up and surrender your plans, your body, your dignity, your sanity. You surrender to the ceiling and the walls and the endless hours. But here is the secret. Surrender is not weakness. Surrender is the bravest thing a mother can do, because it means she is choosing her baby over herself. Over and over and over again. That night, Annie asked for a small recording of her own voice. She spoke to her baby for the first time without anger. She said simple things. Good morning, little one. I am still here. You are still here. Let us try to stay a little longer. Rohan played that recording for her every night after that, and something in her eyes started changing. The emptiness was slowly filling with something else. Not happiness. Not yet. But determination. Quiet, stubborn, exhausted determination. The morning Annie reached 37 weeks, I walked into her room and found her sitting up. Not propped against pillows. Not reclining. Sitting up on her own, her legs hanging over the side of the bed. Her feet touching the floor for the first time in nearly 4 months. She looked different. Her face had color again. Her eyes were tired but awake. And when she saw me, she smiled. Not the polite smile she used to give. A real one. Wobbly and tearful and completely honest. I still remember her exact words. She said, "I never thought I would miss standing so much." And then she stood up. Slowly, carefully, holding the bed rail with both hands. Her legs shook beneath her. For months of muscle loss had left her weak as a newborn foal. But she was upright. She was vertical. She was a person again and not just a body lying in the dark. Rohan stood behind her, ready to catch her if she fell, but she did not fall. She took one small step, then another. Then she stopped and pressed her hand to her belly and closed her eyes. That week, we scheduled the induction. Her cervix was still short, but the baby was full term now. The lungs were developed. The brain was formed. Every single day she had fought for had brought them to this moment. 16 weeks of bed rest. 112 days of staring at the same ceiling. Countless hours of fear, guilt, rage, and loneliness. And now she was going to walk into a delivery room and bring her daughter into the world. Annie asked me to be there for the delivery, not just as her doctor, as the person who had sat beside her in the dark and told her she was not a monster for feeling nothing. I told her I would be there from the first contraction to the last push. She nodded and said something that stayed with me. She said she was still scared. The fear had not disappeared. It had just learned to sit quietly in the corner while she did what needed to be done. I told her that was not fear anymore. That was courage wearing a tired face. The delivery room was quiet in that special way before a baby arrives. Annie lay on the bed, her body exhausted but her eyes wide open. Rohan stood beside her, holding her hand so tightly his knuckles had turned white. I watched the monitor, waiting for each contraction, guiding her through every push. She was so tired. 4 months of bed rest had stolen her physical strength, and now labor was asking for more than she had left. But she kept going. One push, another push. Her face wet with sweat and tears. And then, at 3:47 in the afternoon, her daughter came into the world. A small cry first, then a louder one, then the kind of full-bodied scream that tells every person in the room that this baby is alive and furious about it. I placed that little girl on Annie's chest, still connected by the cord, still slippery and warm. And Annie did something I will never forget. She did not sob. She did not speak. She just pressed her nose into her daughter's hair and breathed. Deep, slow, hungry breaths, like she had been holding her breath for 4 months and could finally let go. The baby's name was Era, which means worthy of respect. Annie had chosen that name during her 3rd week in the hospital, after the infection had passed, and she had started to believe again. She looked up at me over her daughter's head and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." But I shook my head. She had done this. Not me. Not the medicines. Not the hospital. She had held on when every part of her wanted to let go. She had hated and feared and still stayed. That was not medical science. That was something else entirely. Rohan cut the cord with shaking hands. The nurses cleaned and weighed Era. 6 pounds 3 ounces. Perfect. Healthy. Whole. And Annie watched every second of it, her hand reaching out as if she could not bear to be separated even for a moment. When they placed the baby back in her arms, she looked at me and said something simple. She said she finally understood why her body had fought so hard. Not because she was strong, because some loves are so big they have to hurt before they can heal. I have delivered thousands of babies in my career. I have seen women push through pain I cannot describe. But Annie taught me something I will carry forever. Bed rest is not a medical prescription. It is a test of the human spirit. And the women who survive it do not survive because they are brave or positive or full of light. They survive because they allow themselves to break, and then keep going anyway. If you are lying on a bed right now, counting hours, feeling like you cannot take one more day, please know this. You do not have to feel love right now. You do not have to feel hope. You just have to stay. 1 more hour. 1 more breath. That is enough. That is everything.